Want to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the show? Or do you have a story that you'd like to submit for one of our Listener Stories episodes? You can get in touch with the show via the website at www.hauntedukpodcast.com, on Instagram at hauntedukpodcast, on X at hauntedukpod, or you can email us at contactus@hauntedukpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook and TikTok. And if you want to support the show, you can do it via either Patreon or Ko-fi. Both platforms have exactly the same content, but work in slightly different ways. One of the advantages of Patreon is its sleek user interface, but if you want to avoid those pesky additional charges Apple, Google, and Patreon apply to your subscription, then why not give Ko-fi a try? Simply open a browser window and type ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast. That's Ko-fi/Haunted UK Podcast, and you'll soon find us. Whichever platform you choose, we're sure you'll enjoy the bonus content. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the episode. This is the Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts, a shot of scary, just for you. So grab a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts. Trust your instincts. Premonitions can be a very frightening subject of the paranormal. We've all read about accounts of everyday people who have seemingly been able to tap into some sort of hidden dimension. A dimension which seems to be able to feed them images, emotions, and other unbelievable details of events which are about to unfold. But these stories just happen to other people, don't they? Our story for this episode revolves around the strange and terrifying events experienced by a woman named Jane, a wife and mother, who is certain that the feelings and emotions which she was picking up on at a particularly stressful time in her life potentially saved the lives of her and her children. These experiences proved to be so damaging to her that she was diagnosed with PTSD as a direct result. We openly applaud her bravery and courage and thank her so much for letting us tell her story. We'll let Jane take over from here. Around 8 years ago, my family moved to the UK from New Zealand because of a job opportunity that my husband had been offered. Because he already had British citizenship, he would head over to the UK before us, where he would start his job and begin to set up our new home. We had 2 children who were only 4 and 2 years old at the time, so the plan was for me to stay in New Zealand, wait for our visas to come through, and to finalize the sale of our house. This part happened very quickly, but the timeline for the visas was sketchy at best. So I decided to hire a holiday home to cover our remaining time. Of course, this was a busy and stressful time for all of us, and for a long time I assumed everything I felt was just to do with stress and change. I'm not usually a fearful person, but increasingly I felt as if the kids and I were at risk from someone who was specifically going to break into that holiday house while we were alone. Naturally, I put my anxiety down to parenting alone and being stressed, as I said. I felt a certainty about the specific threat though, and when I dwelled on it, I felt like the feeling was building with every action I took. It felt absolutely terrifying and utterly certain. It also felt like I was moving towards an inevitable end, unless I stopped everything that I was doing. Clearly, this seemed impossible and silly at the time. After selling the house, the kids and I drove up to the country to my in-laws. The trip up through New Zealand was mainly on unlit country roads in isolated areas. I found it terrifying, stressful, and exhausting. It felt like I was moving towards something bad and dark. Stopping halfway up, I was extra vigilant with security in the motel we stayed at. Unfortunately, when we arrived at my in-laws, they had a much more relaxed attitude towards security than I like, even in normal times. I'd thought about staying longer with my in-laws, but felt uneasy about doing this, and even though I still felt huge pressure, and an absolute ever-increasing feeling that this mysterious incident was still going to happen, I didn't feel that it would take place at my in-laws. In fact, I was now certain it would be at the holiday house, but I kept stupidly dismissing my fear as bizarre and irrational though. On our drive to the holiday house, I decided to stop at Lake Taupo. This was certainly a tactic to delay the inevitable arrival at our final destination. By this time, the stress had made me so sick that I had to attend the local hospital after developing an infection. When this happened, I'd hoped that this was in fact the dreadful thing, but after leaving with antibiotics, I felt the rising tension even more. I likened it to the tension that builds in a horror movie, but this was taking place in my real life. I just cannot begin to describe how horrible and terrifying the experience and feeling was. And nothing I did made me feel better. Everything felt like I was on a runaway train moving towards a terrifying and inevitable end, involving something awful happening to me and my children. You may ask why, knowing that this incident was going to take place in the holiday house, why didn't I cancel it at this point? And I replay this now in my mind and know that I should have done this. I also now tell other people to please listen to these feelings and act. Yet I didn't. The whole move was incredibly expensive, and I had managed to secure the house via an amazing scheme at my work where I could afford to hire it for weeks at a great rate. It was by the sea and ideal for the kids. My parents' house was too small for me and our 2 children to stay at, and I didn't feel I could ask friends when I had an indefinite time to fill. On reflection, why I didn't stay with my in-laws longer is beyond me, but I didn't. There was every chance the visas could take weeks, a month, or maybe longer. And what would I say? I feel like something bad is going to happen? I just felt ridiculous even thinking about it and then asking anyone to stay with them indefinitely. So again, I rationalized. I was sick, tired, and about to shift countries at any moment, and I was having to manage all of this on my own. Of course I felt this way. Staying in hotels for that time would also have been just too expensive, so that option was out of the question. Making our way to the holiday house, I honestly felt like I was driving into a horror movie. I was terrified, but kept telling myself I'd just made the whole thing up. The fear came from not knowing the place. I was capable of managing as a single woman. This made me determined to be in control and to certainly not scare my kids. As we finally drove up to the house, it was dark, but there were units next to us with people in them, and this made me feel better, and even a little silly. I still jumped at everything and got the kids indoors very quickly. Once inside, I looked in every cupboard and under every bed. I also locked every window and door with the keys supplied, and of course, I double-checked them all, several times. I kept the outdoor lights on to give the illusion that we were expecting someone else to arrive, and turned the TV on. I kept the indoor lights and living room light on and the TV on, all night. I also kept my kids in my bed with me and hardly slept a wink. The next day I felt silly and decided it was definitely in my head. Although when I thought of spending another night there, I wasn't sure that I could cope. I decided to play with the kids and set up their toys, then took them out for a trip to the beach and playground. Before leaving, I checked the locked windows and doors, with the keys, and everything was 100% secure. When I came back, nothing seemed untoward. We played and watched TV, etc., and I was very careful about the kids going outside. And at one point, my 4-year-old grabbed something from the car out the front while my 2-year-old had a nap. I didn't want to leave the little one in the house even for half a minute, because for some reason, I wasn't entirely sure that we were entirely alone. But as usual, I pushed this almost hysterical feeling down and kept busy. I watched from the door as my eldest got what he needed from the car and returned. This, on reflection, was hypervigilant and frightening behavior. Something that I probably realized at the time, but I was powerless to stop it. Those feelings, those emotions that I'd been experiencing had put me on ultra-high alert. Early that evening, I made the kids' dinner, including a dessert with some chocolate in it. After finishing, my eldest got up and was looking for something behind the couch. While he was looking, I noticed him touch the curtains. I was worried about the curtains getting chocolate on them, so went over to check them, pulling one back to look on the other side to do so. Whilst doing this, I saw in horror that the window behind it was wide open. I hadn't noticed this when I closed the curtains, as the window was behind the pulled back part of the curtain when it was not drawn. I had also not checked the windows since returning home earlier in the day, as I'd done such a thorough job checking them all before I left. And all were locked by a key at that point. To say that my blood ran cold was an understatement. I'd watched my children the whole time, and knew it was not one of them who had opened it. The only way that window could have been opened was if someone had been in the house while we were out, and had opened it then. That person could still be in the house. I had no idea where, as I had looked in all the cupboards and under every bed when I came back, and a couple of times after, as that feeling of not being alone was very strong. I will add for clarification that this wasn't the same as the paranormal feeling of not being alone. It was that feeling of being in an environment, knowing that there was quite possibly a real live person in there with you, but you didn't know where, but you just knew that you weren't alone. After other experiences in my life, I trusted this feeling. This was very different. Talking calmly to the kids, I said we'd ran out of milk and needed to pop out to get some more. If somebody was in the house, I wanted them to think that we would be returning, so they didn't try to stop us leaving. Getting in the car, we drove straight to the local police station. After a lot of eye rolls and condescending comments about leaving windows open, the young police officers returned with me and checked the house and watched my kids while I packed a few things. The police officers secured the house completely and formally. In fact, I have to say that I was impressed with the way they did it so carefully and diligently, even though they thought nothing was wrong. They also turned off all the lights. We then stayed at a friend's place for the night. That sleep was the first safe sleep I'd felt in weeks and weeks. It finally felt over. That steadily increasing and building of terror had gone. In my own mind, I was still unsure if I was overreacting, and I also felt sure that there was more to this than just a simple case of a window being left open. The next day, I returned with my father to pick up the rest of my things. My dad is a martial arts black belt, so I felt happy with him being there, but also a little silly by this stage. This, however, quickly changed when we pulled up at the house. We found every door and window open, and all of the lights in the house switched on. I refused to touch anything that had been left in the house or even go inside. My dad went in and checked every room and couldn't find anyone inside. We called the police again, and although the police officer on the phone completely understood and agreed that it was very untoward, all they could do was treat it as an attempted burglary, and not anything more sinister, even though nothing had been taken. A friend of mine who is a clinical psychologist firmly believed that the person who opened the doors and turned the lights on wanted to control and frighten me, as they felt it was the only tool they had to use on me: fear. After they realized I'd got away, who knows what I dodged. I truly believe that something was warning me about a bad person who intended to hurt me and my children in that house. I've been asked if it could have been paranormal activity that turned the lights on and opened the doors and windows, and I've truly considered it, as I am a firm believer in the paranormal, but I'm certain that this wasn't the work of a poltergeist or dark entity, or anything else for that matter. I believe this was a real flesh and blood threat. The warning, however, well, that wasn't. That I cannot explain. It started well before even seeing the house, and just built and built and built. It felt more and more urgent, until I knew that it was about something that would happen in that house, and I had to leave. I believe I've inherited an ability to be guided by something outside of our understanding, something in the form of pure feelings. My grandfather could also do this. I just regret that it took such an extreme event to make me sit up and listen to it, though, and to stop ignoring what I now consider a gift. And that brings us to the end of this short haunt, but leaves us with many questions. The prospect of such a huge move is bound to bring about anxiety and stress, but could these conditions have been responsible for what Jane was sure was going to happen? Or is it that she really does have a gift which has been passed down to certain members of Jane's family through the many generations? Whatever your opinions are of these strange types of precognitive phenomena, one thing remains certain, and that is that these emotions and feelings which were plaguing Jane during this experience were very real. So all that's left to say is this: if a situation ever arises, a situation that leaves you with feelings of unease, feelings of uncertainty, feelings of imminent danger, then you should trust your instincts, just as Jane did. And if you do, who knows? The next person to be the subject of a short haunt could be you.